Meeting to order. We're making progress, I guess.
Recording.
So we'll start off with introductions. I'll get us started off. I'm going to ask first for the in-person roll call and ask that everyone present in the room please state your full name and affiliation as you go around the room. That would be greatly appreciated. I'll start with myself, Alan Sorensen, Commissioner of Planning, MPO Director for Orange County Transportation.
I'm Stacy Butler, Deputy.
Harrington, Senior Transit Planner, Orange County Planning. Jim Woody, County Newburgh.
Yes, it's not going to work. No, you second.
John Rivella, Village of Walden.
Jason Morris, City of Newburgh.
Gary Spears down in Deer Park.
Mike Torelli, Office of the County Executive.
Nicole Farmer, New York State DOT.
You're up, Denise.
Denise Quinn, one way beyond it. Taylor Jackie, Catherine.
John Morrow, Orange County Planning.
Okay. Next, John, if you'll help facilitate the online participant roll call. Again, any other participants, as John goes around, please state your full name and affiliation.
Bert Thielander, Pathways, Vision Hudson Valley.
Thank you, Bert. Andrew Dobson.
Say that again.
Exactly. Sandra Dobson, New York State Department of Transportation.
Scout Manning.
Yeah, Jacob DeWiel, City of Middletown.
Shelley Johnson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Johnston with Creighton Manning Engineering.
Dave Blake.
Dave Lake, Middleton South TCC.
Moisha Gruber.
Hello, nice to meet you. Village of Kirs Joel, working with Gedalia Sagadan. Nice to meet you all.
Sam Sadiq.
Sam Sadiq, Mid Hudson South TCC.
Olu Vollering.
We didn't hear you on the mic, but Olu is with the MTA.
Great, thanks. Corey McAllister.
Hi, Corey McAllister, DOT main office.
We have Jacob, also online.
Yeah, Jacob DeWiel, City of Middletown, New York.
Thanks, Jacob. Nancy Zhu.
Hi, everyone. Nancy Zhou from Thruway.
Andy Buger.
Hi there, Andy Booter, Metro North.
Thanks, Andy. And lastly, Travis Ewald.
Travis Ewald, Orange County Parks.
Thanks. And I think I might have skipped over Valen Parsons.
Valen Parsons, MTA headquarters.
Thank you, Valen. All right, Alan. Good to go.
All right, John, thank you. Next, I'd like to provide an opportunity for a call for citizen participation. If there's any members of the public who wish to provide commentary to the planning committee, this is the opportunity to do so now.
Could I do that or?
No. Yeah. Bert, we'll let you go first and then we'll.
Thank you. I see on the agenda, there's a draft revision to the OCTC public participation plan. I scanned some of the documents, but I didn't see any details about that. So I really hope that that moves forward in a rigorous manner. And I wanted to again propose continued support for the bikeway vision components, segment 3, Heritage Trail from downtown Middletown to Ingrassia Road, Harriman to the New Jersey Transit Station, and the Slate Hill Unionville Railroad grade section. And then at our last Pathways meeting, we decided to reach out to all the Association of Town members with a copy of the Bikeway Vision, the Pathways mission statement, and the draft resolution that we distributed that Alan and I distributed at the Association of Town Meetings recently, and asked them to formally support that resolution supporting the bikeway vision. And I'm hoping to meet with Supervisor Gary Spears and legislator Tom Fagione, with Alan and an OSI representative to seek town of Deer Park support for the bikeway vision. And then two other issues briefly. We learned about a Middletown campus group that is looking at connecting with the Middletown city non-motorized transportation. So we sent them a copy of the bikeway vision. I went to one of the forums where they gathered information, met Mayor DeStefano, and we're hoping to collaborate with that group to help them connect the Middletown campus and components in the city of Middletown with the Heritage Trail. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was hopes that the bikeway vision components that reach up to Ulster County connect with the Walk-Hill Valley Rail Trail and other rail trails that are being developed in Ulster County. So thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Bert, thank you. Your name again, I'm sorry.
Taylor Jaffe
Hey,
with Catskill Mountain Keeper, and we anchor the Rethink Route 17 Alliance. Thanks all for the opportunity to speak, Chair Sorensen and members of the committee. I'm here to address item 7B, the draft 2026 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Plan. In light of the current uncertainty and chaos pertaining to all the projected federal funding flows, and with public pressure growing to cancel NISDOT's fiscally irresponsible proposal to widen State Route 17, now is a moment when the Planning Committee and the entire Orange County Transportation Council needs to reconsider realistic financial planning and project priorities in the upcoming TIP. The positive news about this moment of change is that the cancellation of the State Route 17 widening could free up really significant funding to finally address other projects, especially the long-standing backlog of maintenance needs throughout Orange County and the entire Catskills and Hudson Valley region. Our DOT Region 8 is, I believe, it ranks worst right now in terms of road infrastructure. So it's time to get some funding to do that. The prospect of flexing over $1.4 billion, which had previously been penciled in for one unwarranted NISDOT mega project, the Route 17 expansion, could be used for many other productive local uses instead, and can convert a state government boondoggle to a pure boon to county, town, and village governments, as well as our transit agencies. Redistributing those funds by transferring them from NISDOT's State Route 17 budget to meritorious local projects instead will be an important allocation and evaluation task for the OCTC over the next decade or more. For many cycles, there's been real cognitive dissonance of adopting tips that contain the unsustainable paradox. We have this lack of fiscal capacity to eliminate the backlogs that we have, but at the same time, here the state is saying, we've got all this money to widen a road that really doesn't need to be widened. So now is the time that we can really end that dissonance and misprioritization. As a little bit of background, here are some suggested basic principles for the Planning Committee and the entire OCTC and its counterparts in adjoining counties to keep in mind as you begin to undertake this historic shift of $1.4 billion from this ill-advised widening to local needs instead. So one, with the draft environmental impact statement for the Route 17 project due this fall, we should get that around August or September. Now is the time for transportation professionals and local elected leaders to recognize the inevitable. That NISDOT widening Route 17 is proving to be financially, legally, and politically untenable. Adding unneeded new lanes to a highway simply will induce more cars and trucks to save, I believe according to their own projections, at most during peak periods, 3 minutes for drivers. And in turn would make traffic and pollution worse while allowing our local road and bridge maintenance backlog to deteriorate. It's also unlikely to hold up in the court of public opinion or in litigation. And in the last year, the price tag for this project has also ballooned from 1 billion to 1.4 billion, nearly a 50% increase. To any prudent person, and certainly anyone closely observing the chaos in Washington, D.C. right now, would have to conclude that any past assumptions about huge sums of federal funds flowing to New York State could become null and void. And then third, the statutory and administrative tools exist for NISDOT and local governments to collaborate and flex the funds that had previously been programmed to widen Route 17 and devolve those funds to local governments for a vast assortment of local priorities instead. Other states have effectively transferred funds from state to the local level and have an improved return on investment. That reallocation will allow OCTC and its counterparts to commence the process of reprogramming the transferred funds to more urgent local needs instead. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this here. I really appreciate the time and I appreciate all of your attention. I really do want to emphasize that this is a real opportunity. I know folks within NISDOT have and some of our own local leaders are saying that this is a done deal, but it's really not. That money is on the table for the county to use, and it can be flexed. There are methods to do that. I left my contact over in the sign-in, and I'd be happy to point anyone to or additional resources to continue that conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the call for citizen participation. Next item on the agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from April 9th, 2025. These were included in your materials packets. If there are no objections, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes. John, second.
Second.
Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Moving on, communications and announcements. We would like to remind everyone that applications for the New York State DOT local call for projects for roadway departure system safety are due tomorrow, Friday, June 13th, 2025. There'll be an email that's going to be going out from OCTC, our contact list over the summer, to confirm whether individuals on the list wish to remain on the list, unsubscribe, or if others from their municipality, agency, or organization should be added. MPO staff are working with county IT on the county department's needs for a contact management system and hopes to have that procurement commenced before the end of the year. Questions? Moving on, reports and actions on old business. I'm going to ask Stacy to give us the OCTC staff report.
Okay. John and I have mainly been focused on the preparation of the tip, legal assistance from Nicole and Imtech, a variety of other folks. And we've also done revisions to the operating procedures, proposed revisions to the public participation plan, all of which will be discussed further under the new business portion of the meeting. We will be working on Title VI policy updates, as well as proposed project selection framework that provide basic parameters for structuring and evaluating tip calls for projects. We hope to have drafts of both of those for the August meeting, and then they end up adopted in probably October. We're also getting organized to prepare for the Mid-Hudson Valley TMA recertification, which will include a site visit, and that's tentatively scheduled for the week of
Stacy, thank you. Are there any other members who wish to report? Okay. Move it along then. Actions on old business. Do any members wish to raise any matters of old business? Yeah,
Just didn't know if you have gotten any applications for the new funding round yet? Sent out the request projects. Does anything come in?
For the,
For road departure?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nothing yet, right? Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, thought you meant the tip for a second. So,
okay, we can move on to new business. First item is the draft amendment. OCTC 2311 to fiscal year 23-27 tip. This will amend the current tip to add New York State DOT project to resurface Route 209 from the city of Port Jervis line to New York State Route 211. 14-day public comment period will run from June 16th through June 30th. This is funded with National Highway Performance Program and state dedicated funds that are allocated to the New York State DOT outside of the local tip funding. Are there any questions? Okay.
Yeah, where's the funds coming from for this one?
The National Highway Performance Program and state dedicated funds.
Right, it's from a block paving project that was housed on the Hudson South tip. We break that out as we identify candidates, and this was one of the ones we selected.
Not taken away from someone else's project, so I'm happy. Thanks.
Okay. That was a good question. Good answer. Move on to the draft amendment, OCTC 2312 to 2317 tip. This will amend the current tip to replace the structure that carries Route 17 over New York State Route 17K and also lower the elevation of Route 17K under the structure to improve vertical clearance. The 14-day public comment period will run from June 16th through the 30th. This is funded again with the National Highway Performance Program and state dedicated funds that are allocated to the New York State DOT outside of the local tip funding. Are there any questions, comments? All right, move on to a third amendment. This will amend the current tip to add New York State DOT project to rehabilitate several culverts along New York State Route 52, New York State Route 32, New York State Route 218, and New York State Route 207. The project will make these facilities more resilient to extreme weather events. The 14-day public comment period will run from June 16th through June 30th. This is funded with PIT bond
And protect.
STBG Flex, and state dedicated funds that are allocated to New York State DOT for the local tip fund. Outside of the local tip fund.
That's similar.
All right, going to move on to the next tip amendment. This is OCTC 2026, 2030 tip. Is there a question? If not, if there's someone who's not muted, please mute. Is it a question?
No, just mute, just mute.
Okay. John, can you mute it?
I'm not sure if I can.
You should be able to mute all of them.
Yeah. I'm gonna move along. The draft of full proposed OCTC 2026-2030 tip was distributed to the contact list and posted on the website. The 30-day public comment period will run from June 16th through July 16th. John will now provide a presentation on the highlights of the proposed draft. John.
So, yeah, like Alan said, I'm gonna provide a short presentation, and provide just kind of a high level overview of some of the highlights and key points of the 2026 to 2030 tip. What I'll talk about are just some kind of quick facts from the highway and transit side. I'll talk briefly about some new pins that are part of this tip. Then I'll move on to discuss the block pin funding and future culvert projects. And lastly, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. And then there's also the OCTC contact information if any questions come up later on. So on the highway side of things, you can see on this slide, some regional targets and local targets. I'll read through them briefly. OCTC received $43.4 million in Region 8 local aid funding. Region 8 in total received approximately $300 million. OCTC received $139.6 million in Region 8 FHWA funding. Region 8 total funding is approximately a little over $1 billion in that category. The pie chart underneath shows a breakdown of the percentages of those different funding sources across Region 8. As far as local targets go, OCTC's share represents 4% of the total funding in Region 8. And that's a slight increase from the previous tip cycle from 2023 to 2027. And OCTC's CMAC and STBG large urban allocations decreased from the previous tip. However, STBG off-system bridge allocations increased. The table below shows a breakdown of CMAC, STBG large urban, and STBG off-system funding allocated across the 5 years of the new tip. I'll move on, but if anybody has any questions or wants me to return to this slide, just let me.
The left pie has more huts to it than you're listing on the right chart. There are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total types of funding.
Yeah, that's right. In the tip document, you can see a table breakdown for all of the different categories.
Okay.
It's really tiny and hard to read.
All right, on the transit side, as far as regional targets go, Region 8 received $426 million in transit funding over the 5 years. The combined 5-year target for all 4 FTA programs, that's 5307, 5337, 5339, and 5310, totals almost $238 million. Locally, Orange County received $91.7 million in 5307 funding, 6.3 million in 5339 funding, and $2.3 million in 5310 funding. Same thing, if anybody wants me to return to the slide, just let me know.
And so these 3 funding sources cover all operating expenses and buses and any capital investment in transit.
5307 can be used for capital or operating. 5339 has capital. 5310 for that's not for public transit, that's more for agency, public service, human agencies.
That's right.
And where can we see the breakdown of how much total is for operating and how much is for capital?
That you're not going to see that breakdown in here.
Yeah.
Because that will depend on needs each year based on expenses. Maybe there's a need for buses. We don't lock ourselves in as that, so just know the targets.
I know last year there was like leftover 5307 funding. Was it from the county pot or from the Region 8 pot?
Probably the county one, but I'm not sure specifically what you're.
Or maybe the TMA,
The TMA.
5307, there was some backlog funding, which we did for smaller projects.
Yes.
With
And that came from,
That came from the left side of the truck there, the Quincy Newburgh UZA. Gets a portion, and then Orange County itself, Ross and the state.
I was gonna say, you'll see in the tip strips, you'll see capital, some like replacement buses, and you'll see what we estimate for operating assistance. And we're not necessarily locked in, but they're placeholders on that.
Is there a way for the tip listing to be divided into highway separate and transit separate? So,
If you look at the numbers, it's kind of
so it's all mixed up. So one number is transit, one
So
number
the
is.
transit projects start with ATRO or ATO?
Therefore, it's like the end.
Thank you.
This slide covers some new pins that are on 2026 to 2032. And yeah, like Rob mentioned, you see here, both of these new pins are transit projects. So you see 8TO 009 and then 8TO 010. Now, I just think it's important to mention that these are not new projects, like new ideas for projects that were discussed and created. Instead, these are just new pin numbers for some previously approved bus replacement.
So as opposed to an expansion of the fleet, it's not an expansion, it's just replacement of buses that have reached the end of their useful life or will during the course of the trip.
So do you also have new projects for new buses or communities that need additional buses? But that's not in the current tip.
It's all just replacement.
It's just replacement. And if there's a need for new buses in the next 5 years,
That's a discussion, and then we can amend it and then add the funding once it's identified.
Alright, so on this slide, you can see a table of block pin funding from the new tip. I included both the funding that's available starting in federal fiscal year 2026 and also a column of the total funding available across all 5 years for those different categories. Something to note when I was putting this together, you can see for the block 03 SDBG large urban, there's no funding available in federal fiscal year 2026. I think that funding starts to become available in 2029. It's 2029 and 2030 that totals the 3.5 million you see there. Like we've mentioned before, a call for projects will be likely in 2026. And like Stacy mentioned earlier, we're working on an adoption of a project selection framework that'll help us facilitate and do a successful call for projects.
can CMAQ funding be used for buying new buses?
They have to be alternative fuel.
I don't know if they're, we've never used it, I'm not familiar with it, I know we've used it as. To help operating expenses, but it has to be a certain threshold with expansion, it can't just be to help a random bus company, it has to be, you expanded X amount and the air quality results show.
Yeah.
That it's needed or it's eligible, so.
Right, there's a, can't think of the name of the program or that DOT runs to prove the emissions analysis for the.
Oh, for CMAQ determination things, CMAQ tracker, right?
CMAQ tracker,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it's called, and it can be used for micro mobility, carpooling, van pooling, that type of project.
But historically, I think CMAQ was not fully utilized. And there's some transit providers that desperately need buses. So there's only a way to utilize some of the unutilized CMAQ funding for new buses that would be a big help. So it's worthwhile looking into. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes this brief tip presentation. If anybody in the room or online has questions right now, please feel free to ask. If anything comes to mind later on, you know how to reach us here, OCTC contact information on the slide, so feel free to reach out for any public comment period.
This is Bert Thielander. I have a brief question.
Sure, go ahead, Bert.
Where does one submit public comment? You mentioned the Route 209 Port Jervis renovation and some other projects. And you mentioned like beginning on June 16th. Is that done on the OCTC website, or how does one do that?
You could do email to octc@orangecountygov.com or just regular mail. We're at 124 Main Street in Goshen, New York, 10924.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, for the 2020, like likely call for projects in 2026, is there a pathway created for the public to be involved in that call? I understand we're looking, down the road too, so.
The members of OCTC will be able to apply for projects, but as part of that, they'll go before the planning committee to do, or unless they create a subcommittee for the project selection process, and that'll be public and before they go up to speak here.
I want to add to that, each project is located in a local municipality. The best bet is to petition the local municipality to submit a project on that behalf. So those meetings are all public, and if you ever think of a project in a certain town or city or village, go down to that village board, press them to submit a project application.
I was gonna suggest the same.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Well, when do you plan to hold the public tip meeting?
But this committee deals with municipal
This is,
applications.
yeah, this is the meeting. Must move on.
Any other questions? Okay. We're gonna move on then to the draft air quality conformity determination for the Orange County portion of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, particulate matter 2.5 maintenance area, and Poughkeepsie, New York ozone non-attainment area for 2026 through 2030 tip. This was also distributed to the contact list and is will be posted on the OCTC website. 30-day comment period will run from June 16th through July 16th. OCTC would like to thank NIPTech staff for their able assistance in performance and travel demand modeling and emissions analysis for this determination. The interagency consultation group approved both OCTC's and NIPTech's conformity determinations for this tip update with minor edits from the circulated draft, which we posted on the OCTC website. Any questions? Not, move along. Next item is our draft PONA. So the draft transition conformity determination statement for the 1997 Poughkeepsie ozone non-attainment area. For the 2630 tip was also distributed to the contact list and will be posted on the website. The third public comment period will run from June 16th through July 16th. OCTC staff would like to thank DCTC staff for the preparation of this determination. This determination was also approved by the interagency consultation group with minor edit, which we circulated from the circulated draft, which we posted on the OCTC website. Any questions on the PONA? Moving on, we have the draft revisions to OCTC operating procedures. The proposed revised draft was also distributed to the contact list and posted on the OCTC website. The 45-day public comment period will run from June 16th through July 31st. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and ask her to provide highlights of key aspects of the revisions. Stacy.
So is this a different public comment deadline than we did?
Yes. Operating procedures, a public participation plan at 45 days.
Nice. Creating procedures and also in the table,
No, they're separate.
separate documents.
All right, thank you, John. Go to the first slide. These edits are or the proposed revisions stem from, I think, our April planning committee meeting. We had a lot of discussion about some different provisions in the procedures. We've left the voting alone, but we're just gonna go through some of the sort of more housekeeping cleanup that just make the procedure a little more functional. And as I said, the membership and voting, that's, I don't know if anyone's following along, I added page numbers for the version that was circulated. This is on page 5. The structure is substantively unchanged. There's some language in the towns and villages about how folks get selected or whatever. That was kind of, it varied between the two, so it just was made the same. Just for cleanup purposes. Proxies, there's a typo I found last night when I was preparing this. In the circulated draft, there's a page 5, a page 1, and then a page 6. So that's what page this is on. We did some cleanup language, we made it clear that the executive officer for the municipality designates the property, the proxy. And then there was discussion in our April meeting about maybe appointing another municipality to stand in, but that's gonna get tricky if the executive officer is supposed to appoint proxies. So basically, if there's absolutely no other officer, employee, or consultant for the member municipality that or the voting municipality, then non-voting municipality can be designated a proxy. Say the town or village. If that makes sense. The policy board, again, this is on that weird page 1, and the planning committee sections were separated and cleaned up. They were kind of garbled together a little bit in our existing operating procedures. We added an executive session provision for the policy board. I think Ulster and Rebecca's has that, so we're looking at language from there.
That question. So you said if the voting member is not here, a non-voting member can vote as a proxy, as long as they're not in the same grouping. Right,
That's because we,
otherwise it would be an intolerance.
well,
You can't have somebody from the same town, from the same region, or there are rules, right?
well, it should be from the, and this is, I don't even know if we want that language in there. Again, these are recommendations, so it's open for discussion. It's probably best to just leave it as you need to appoint an officer, employee, consultant of that entity that's been selected as the representative. I think part of it, the discussion was it's easier to maybe call someone else, but it's still, we also still decided to remain with the one person vote.
Correct.
So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Perhaps, oh.
What if we add an alternate to each region?
Folks want to discuss that.
You know, because then,
If you have two from your region, and
Right.
one of them's not there, another one from that region could go from that side, that
Right.
makes sense.
right, if you have an alternate from the region, so that way, you know, as you said. I think that is a good option.
Now, if anyone has questions, comments on that?
Makes sense.
Alright. Sorry, just jotting this. And. Okay, oh, and we defined consensus as unanimity. Because the current language makes things a little fuzzy. Okay, the planning committee section on page 7, that. We talked about this in the meeting, and again. A little bit unclear from the notes, but. Right now you guys vote, but there's really no quorum, because it's all 42, 3 municipalities. But quorum would be 22, which would be really hard to achieve. Transportation councils kind of have a mixed bag of things going on with planning committees. Some they do vote. We want ones that have like a smaller number of municipalities. We were gonna go back to having this just be more of an ongoing, larger technical advisory committee, so you don't vote, you present everything, just like we've been doing, as before, but you don't necessarily vote to things, the policy. But you'll be able to have that pre-discussion before it goes to policy. So that's that language, and then we also simplified the responsibilities list. I think that's also taken also or that just. We added a separate subcommittees and tax section that's on page 8. So either policy board or planning committee can create those, whether it's for something like the LRTP or it's like a topic like transit. There's also language in there that the subcommittees and tax can include more than just OCTC members. So for instance, if you want transit operators on there or engineers or what have you, those can be added down. And then we put a provision that the activity information for the subcommittees and tax would be posted on the OCTC website and probably distributed to the list as well. Communications, that was cleaned up a little. I think the current version has us like sending everything to the entire contract distribution list. That's not always necessary for it's very specific sort of maybe funding sources that not everyone's eligible for, or if it's say just to a subcommittee. So policy and planning committee meetings. Materials are still going to go to the contact list, full distribution list, and posted on the OCTC website, and then all other communications will be distributed or posted as per expression of the staff.
But that is a bit risky because the staff is going to decide who gets what. And it may not be what
it's
what
rare.
end user is gonna think is right, so.
Yeah, I would think if,
How's the selection process?
well, I would think if you're gonna send something to one member, it should be to all the members.
That's typically, it's
Yeah.
rare that something would go to at least
Yeah.
less than the members, the full distribution list.
No.
To
We're just concerned with membership. Membership should get equal material.
Yeah.
But membership also includes non-voting members.
Mhm.
Like, you have a municipal list, every municipality gets the emails.
Or was a member.
Yeah.
Voting or non-voting.
What are you doing?
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll modify that.
Thanks. Agreed. Yeah, I'm trying to speak for everybody, I'm not sure we're on consensus here.
Heck. LRTP, we didn't really have a section in the existing procedures, but we wanted to add one, and right now, that's on page 8. We, again, I think it's similar to Dutchess or Ulster. There's a laundry list based on regulation of the contents that need to be included. I don't know if we want that full laundry list in the procedures, or if we just maybe want to have the reference to the regulation instead, for the sake of brevity and or if the regulation changes.
Like pages and pages, make a reference.
Oh,
I'm into the reference.
reference. Okay. UPWP, that was in there previously. There was some kind of older procedures that were listed in there, and they conflicted a bit with typically NISDOT sends out a call letter to all the MPOs to have the UPWP preparation is going to work each year. So that's really kind of what governs it, along with federal regulations. So that language is. And then the tip section, it's similar to the existing, but we did clarify the admin mod and amendment table. That's on pages 13 and 14. It's a little bit the same. There were some different things I think that we needed with admin mods to be able to move things faster. We also kept our rollover language. We were just talking about that earlier with Nicole. That's for things like we're just doing amendments to the current tip, which we're starting a new one, so ship them onto the new one if need be, admin mod using your rollover provision.
But I suggest it would be beneficial if we break up the chart on the screen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go through them, see what you guys think. Again, the admin mod, the staff does in concert with NISDA, and we just adjust it if necessary. It's typically more minor things. And then the amendments require the presentation before the planning committee, 14 or 30-day public comment period if it's subject to air quality conformity determination, and then an amendment will be approved by the policy board.
So it says under two A. Again, this is after reading it, your general approach is that decisions that impact the total funding for the OCTC needs to go to this committee for vote, which is correct. Adding new project needs to go to this committee for vote because it impacts everybody. Somebody's adding a project that impacts everybody. Some of the I wasn't clear under two where it says addition or deletion of project phase. A, addition of construction or construction inspection phase for an existing for existing project. What does this mean? Is this allocating additional funds for the total TIP, or is it moving funds from construction to inspection? Exactly. No, A, two A's, two, I'm sorry, actually it's a mistake. You have two A's, one, yeah, I was referring to the second A.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's a big catch. Oh, so that's for the, existing, currently that's an amendment, and,
I would have that an administrative modification because it doesn't add any cost to the total. It moves money from construction, let's say, to construction inspection.
It's funding within.
It's funding within the project, it's within the total, it doesn't need an amendment. That's an administrative modification.
well, it's not necessarily, that's like
Yes, I
adding,
didn't read it right.
They are adding funding, or is it not adding funding?
this would be adding construction or construction inspection phases, so it's not just.
But it's adding a phase, but where is the money coming from? It's adding new monies?
Yes.
Because then it should be clarified. If it's adding new monies, then it's an amendment. If it's only moving funds from construction phase or a right-of-way phase to this phase, then it's an administrative modification.
Right now it's proposed as an amendment, because it would be adding funds for the construction or construction inspection.
But it doesn't say that. Even without
There's the check at the end of.
No, I'm saying like if it doesn't say it's adding funding, what he's saying. If it says adding funding, we want an amendment. If it's not adding funding, it's modification. That's what you're
Exactly.
discern.
Exactly.
I don't see an issue with that. If that's what it is. Doesn't say that.
Because when it's internally for a project and it costs more right of way and less inspection, it's not additional funding that's coming out of the pot. It's just using the same funding for a different use. We don't need an amendment for that funding. It's only if additional funding is needed.
No, I understand that. I guess that's the, and I think this came up probably with a project earlier or last year. Do you want both of the A's to be amendments?
Only
Or
if
just,
Only if it's adding money.
it goes based on the concept. If it's adding funding from the overall pot, then it needs to be an amendment. If it's
Regardless of
internally to
phase.
manage a
Correct.
project, if it's internally to manage the project better within the confines of the
There's
funding.
a separate section for cost change.
that's what I was.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then this is an administrative modification.
Right.
Because I think we can probably collapse both the A's and if you can just do it, if it's adding
one.
funding to any phase.
Yeah, that's fine.
But if it's not adding, then it should be an administrative modification.
Right, and I think that.
This is Sandra on the phone. Why don't, to clarify 2A, both 2As, just say when funding is not, when a change in cost isn't involved.
Exactly.
I would say when additional funding is involved.
I was maybe defining it as no change in total project cost.
Yes.
Better,
Yeah.
There you go.
and that would be add mod, and then your amendments come in right down in 3.
Yes.
Right.
But the only thing you have to be careful of is if you want to add additional local money, that should not trigger an amendment. So the
Federal aid.
total,
Okay.
right, so you have to clarify federal aid. Okay, good.
Which it does, 3A says federal share,
Right,
which would trigger the amendment.
right.
Okay. Anyone else have questions, concerns on any of the?
On the next page, scroll down under 8, addition of de-obligation or withdrawn project. Under 8. So what does this mean? Addition of de-obligation of withdrawn project, you're adding a withdrawn project, or is it an addition or it's a withdrawal?
You're adding back a project that was taken off before.
Is that?
Yes.
Addition of the,
You're going to
okay.
add previously.
The other than defunded world of
Yeah.
thing.
And then what do you have? So why is that a not, if you're re-adding a project that was previously withdrawn, that is gonna cost money to the overall pot? Why is the first line only a modification?
That would be, let's see, if it's less than 10 million federal funds and within the STIP, I mean,
The only thing I can think, this is Sandra on the phone, is sometimes when a project goes inactive, funds are de-obligated. It's more of an administrative thing.
So it's
But
not
then
like-
when the going again, you want to spend money, it's probably to save time for the project sponsor, so you don't have to actually go through an amendment.
Okay, that's understood. But what's the next line under B, then administrative, an amendment? Because it's only changing the sponsor.
yeah, that can be up to the group. If you prefer
Yeah.
amendment versus, but then again.
I would do both on the administrative modifications then, just adding a sponsor. Let's say there's a project that crosses multiple municipalities and both municipalities want to sponsor it. Why is that something that needs a vote on? That's an administrative.
I guess it would depend on if when the sponsor withdrew the project, they also gave up the money, right? So I would agree, these two are a little worded strangely.
Sandra, what you said earlier is different than what you're saying now. Before
Yeah.
you said that if a project is formally withdrawn by the original sponsor, and then he decides, he changes his mind and wants to put it back, I think that project should come before the committee. But if a project is not formally withdrawn, but the money was internally de-obligated, that's a different story.
Correct. I think it really depends on the status of the funding at that moment when a project is withdrawn. Maybe even they should be different, they shouldn't be put together, right? A de-obligated scenario can be very different from a withdrawn.
Exactly.
It's almost case by case.
Yeah, you're right. And a withdrawn project should require a vote by the council, but if it's de-obligated or adding a sponsor, that's something for the administrative people to do.
Because we de-obligated project to that before.
Exactly.
Put it back on it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So do you want to just remove the sponsor type and just say de-obligated as an
I think-
AdMod and a withdrawal
I
as
think
an
you should,
amendment?
you should work that out with Sandra. You don't need to do it here under the spotlight. Just work it out with Sandra because something
sense.
doesn't add up.
I believe we took this from DCTC, so
They're not as good as us though.
we can chat then. Yes. About how that's used over there too.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Concerns?
Are the operating procedures that's in the tip narrative? These operating procedures or your current? Because the last three pages of the tip narrative, I assume are the current operating procedures?
No, they're gonna be
The new ones?
the new ones.
Okay.
It may not, because
But
you
maybe
said
not.
it's a different, it's a different comment period.
Yeah.
But we don't have a July meeting. So
Delayed.
August, so
Okay.
maybe it'll work it out, we'll see.
Thank you.
I'm just noting to make changes in both.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. Any other questions? Hey, now we're gonna move on to draft revisions to the OCTC Public Participation Plan. Again, these were distributed, the contact list and posted on the website. A 45-day public comment period will run from June 16th through July 31st. Once again, I'll ask Stacy to provide highlights of the key aspects of the revisions.
This revision initially started out was gonna be something minor because we shifted. There used to be more language about public participation in the operating procedures themselves, which didn't always completely align with what was in the public participation plan. So we wanted to delete stuff from the operating procedures and just rely on the public participation plan that outlines procedures for all of the different work products. But over that time period, there were changes in federal laws, especially executive order, and US DOT has also sent out a letter or two. It's the comply with the law letter. So additional changes were made to the public participation plan in order to comply with that and not put any federal funding at risk. And the executive orders and the other US DOT guidance has basically eliminated requirements surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental justice, and limited English proficiency. A lot of the sort of language requiring that, referencing previous executive orders on those requirements, certain kind of like analysis and maps were deleted, but the strategies, techniques, things like that, that would actually help ensure that a wide variety of stakeholders are included. We did not delete those. We shifted those into other areas of the public participation plan. So essentially why they are there has been deleted, but the expanded techniques have not been deleted. We also did some accessibility revisions to this document. We've ran it through MS Word accessibility. So you'll see adjusted font sizes, image sizes, table formats, colors that were changed throughout the documents, and alt text was added when people are reviewing it online for the various images. The open reference to the open meetings law, again, this is a federally required entity. We're not subject to the New York State open meetings law. The main issue with that was publication in newspapers, of which there's 5 of them. They're weeklies. Timeframes are weird. It was sort of holding up the process, and it impacts scheduling of the meetings and meeting deadlines. So we removed that provision. We're still, as discussed in our meeting earlier, that we're embracing transparency and participation, but just without the time restrictive and the less than cost effective newspaper requirements. Everything's still going to go to the OCTC contact list by email, and it's also still going to be published on the OCT website. And depending when we're doing something big like the LRTP, at our discretion, we can also still publish that in newspapers if like. And the OCTC roles and responsibilities in table 1 for the planning committee that had monthly meetings. The last few years, we've typically met around average bi-monthly, so we just made that minor change. We updated a reference to the latest transportation bill, but I don't know if folks have thoughts if we want to keep like the name of the specific transportation bill in there or just create a generic language from the current transportation bill. Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts?
Generic.
Okay. And table 2 has work product and participation procedures. This sets forth the whole 14, 30, 45-day timeframes, the language kind of varied a lot, but it should really be kind of similar for each work product in terms of the process, so that's cleaned up, so everything kind of matches. It reads more fluidly. The forms of public notice, we actually didn't have what they were, so we added that they were going out to the OCTC contact list and posted on the website. And the public comment section, that was another one that was a little bit jumbled, so we reordered that a bit to reflect the logical process flow. And we added a provision which stole from Duchess or Ulster that social media posts are not considered public comment. Just to make that clear. And then the Title VI non-discrimination statement and complaint was kind of stuck in the middle of the document randomly. We just took that and moved it into the appendix B. Table 3, public participation goals. These were reformatted per the accessibility recommendations. There's a lot of sort of hard to read errors that came up. And strategies and techniques from the previous table 4 geared toward hard to reach communities. Again, this was stuff from like DEI, environmental justice, limited English proficiency. We took the strategies and techniques and we incorporated them into table 3 and then some later sections on specific techniques, so we didn't lose those tools. And then monitoring metrics, we just revised to a bit more trackable items. There were some things that we weren't able to track there. And then the appendix B, we had maps of community demographics, again, that related to some of the things that have been eliminated due to current federal executive orders. And that appendix B was replaced with the Title VI non-discrimination statement form. Anyone have any questions, concerns? There's a chat, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Stacy.
Just a little bit again.
Good, all right, so Stacy, thank you. Next meeting dates for reference, July, again, there'll be no meeting. So enjoy the month off. Thursday, August 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. in classroom number 4 at the Fire Training Center. 9 Training Center Lane, New Hampton, New York, 10958. So right here in this very room.
The voting meeting.
Yes.
It's a voting meeting, so an in-person quorum is necessary for the adoption of the tip.
Thank you.
So just make an appeal to all the voting members to be present. And
We're gonna get a new updated tip on email before that,
yes.
after incorporating all the public comments. Okay.
yeah, and then it's set for September, Thursday, September 18th, mark your calendar, that meeting is canceled. So if it's on your calendar, take it up.
The 18th is canceled?
For September, only the
Yes.
TMA has a recertification going on, so we're gonna be strictly with that.
So August 14th is on.
Yes.
September's
come on.
No.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
All right, meeting is adjourned. If it's an open.
Thank you. Robert's rules, you move right.
Is it August 14th? It used to be August 13th. Should we change it?
It might.
Okay, so we're meeting.
Significant.
I wonder.
Yes.
What are we meeting?
We're meeting about PDR, so we counted PDR. But I was wondering if you. Because I have some questions on this. And I don't want to ask them here, it wastes everybody's time. So.